87 members. And our main roles include supporting industry, both in the imports and exports space. We also support our seed processors, our seed merchants and suppliers, and most everybody. The only differentiation here is that we do not represent growers. The growers are represented by the likes of Tomatoes New Zealand and Vegetables New Zealand. So within NZGSTA, we have Charlotte Connolly, who's our chair. We've got Thomas Chin, who's our general manager. Jo Townsend is the chair for the vegetable seed business group, and underneath her, Warren Hobson, who's the vice chair, and then myself as the biosecurity and technical manager. So I'm just up to the, cool. So I have seen James' presentation, it still continues to scare me. I think a bit of perspective here though is I'll probably mostly be talking about New Zealand's biosecurity system as it stands. So obviously, main point you've heard from James here is that there's a lot going on in the international space. Fundamentally supporting those international things are the international standards for phytosanitary measures. And there's also bilateral agreements, trade negotiations, and oversight by the national plant protection organisations of the relevant countries. I'm not sure, you hopefully have all seen this diagram before. It was kindly provided by Eve from HORNZ. Basically, it's a representation of New Zealand's biosecurity system. And what a lot of holes, hey? But the point of this model is that while there are a lot of holes, there's individual layers in place that are managing those risks. So no system is 100% effective, but the reasoning behind this is each layer will help minimize that risk, and there's different processes in place to help manage that risk to reduce the unwanted pests or diseases coming into New Zealand. Now, while this is a great model, we actually think that there's obviously the offshore international part that we think is very important. And we also believe there's commercial practices going in there that are supporting MPI's biosecurity system. Cool, next slide. Sorry. Now, I was unsure whether or not you guys will have seen this before. The people at the front, well versed. So this is actually an extract from New Zealand's import health standard. This is specific to tomato seeds. And basically, these are the requirements that any tomato seed coming into New Zealand must meet. There's obviously options for coming into New Zealand. Under the international standards for phytosanitary measures, there must be options. They need to be least trade restrictive. They must enable trade but still manage the risk, and the risk must be actual risk, not perceived risk. Otherwise, we are basically not meeting our international obligations under IPPC. Next slide there. I won't make you read that. So for most seed coming into, well, all seed coming into New Zealand comes under the seed for sowing import health standard. Sorry, all seed for sowing comes in under the seed for sowing health standard. There's part 1, which will cover off your basic seed. Most vegetable seeds coming into New Zealand, though, also have individual schedules underneath. And sitting under those individual schedules are the options for pest-free area, pest-free place of production, or testing and finding free of. So I'll just talk quickly about pest-free area, pest-free place of production. So fundamentally, these are governed by ISPM 4, which is pest-free area, and ISPM 10, pest-free place of production. Within those frameworks, before a National Plant Protection Organisation establishes a pest-free area or pest-free place of production, they must meet these requirements. This is very high level. These are 20 pages of requirements that they must meet. And then sitting underneath those are generally a bilateral quarantine arrangement as well that support those pest-free areas and pest-free places of production. So you've got the description of the area, obviously the biology of the pest, fundamental in driving these. You've got the establishment and maintenance of the pest-free place of production or production site or area. You've got the system to establish the area. You've got the quarantine measures that they must be implementing to maintain the status. And then you've got the follow-up inspection and verification to ensure that these are maintained. And you've got measures in place in the event of a detection. So those could be, well, it will depend on the biology of the pest, really, what they're going to be. I should say pest-free areas generally managed directly by the National Plant Protection Organisation. A New Zealand example would be New Zealand is free from economically significant fruit fly. We operate at a country-free, pest-free area level. Pest-free places of production, generally managed by the organisation itself, but subject to audit and enforcement at the NPPO level. Cool, next slide. For our imports for seed, the IHS, the Import Health Standard, actually specifies methodology for sampling, which will be ISTA or ASA methodology. ISTA, the International Seed Testing Association. ASA methodology is basically Association of Official Seed Analysts. ASA is more Canada, USA based. ISTA, generally European, more internationally recognized, is my understanding. Testing requirements, you've got offshore. So as James alluded to, a lot of our seed importers want to keep risk offshore. So the majority will also be testing offshore. So seed will not come to New Zealand if it has not met the offshore declarations. But there is on-arrival testing. If it does come into New Zealand for testing, it's generally because there's not a testing methodology available in the country that's exporting. But if it comes in on arrival, it's also coming in securely. So as part of that, being delivered directly to transitional facilities that have systems in place to ensure traceability is not lost, to ensure that there's no loss of seed, and to ensure that seed is safely held before it gets tested and found free of whatever quarantine pest it's needing to meet the additional declaration of. So generally, this is a tomato-specific example. Lots that are greater than 15,000 seed, 3,000 seeds of those are sampled in order to be tested and verified free from the quarantine pest of concern. There is an option that's recently been added for small seed lots, which is less than 15,000, but there's requirements on these that they're made up of a homogeneous composite sample. So basically, the seed sampled is reflective of the entire seed lot. So it will need to be same species, same producer, and several other requirements like that. The IHS testing is providing a 95% confidence that 0.1% of infection will be detected. So that equates to about 1 in 10,000 seeds. If there is infection, 1 in 10,000 seeds, it will be detected. So I'm sure everyone here has watched Border Control. So I'll talk to this at a very high level. So all seed coming into New Zealand is inspected by MPI. There's a ×5 or ×2 ISTA rate. The majority of seed is remaining at ×5 ISTA rate. Recently, there's been a reduction in the ×2 ISTA rate, which is for those pathways that have deemed to be more compliant than other pathways. So tomato seed has been going down to a ×2 ISTA inspection rate. Some cucurbit species are going down to a ×2 inspection rate. And corn, some of those are coming in at a ×2 inspection rate. Obviously, there's options if something is detected in New Zealand for viruses. If something is detected in New Zealand, it's a reship destroy. There is no treatment options available. If it's a pest, an insect, there can be fumigation. It needs to be deemed to be efficacious fumigation or other fungi, there needs to be an efficacious control that MPI can put on before it's released. Otherwise, it's a reship destroy. Pathway profile. So these things here are all things MPI are doing. You've got your pathway profiling. You've got your approved transitional facilities. You've got the amazing detector dogs, so cute. And you've also got compliance assessments. So those sort of assessments are feeding into these inspection rates and those sorts of things. They're being done frequently by MPI to ensure basically the smooth release of seed at the border without jeopardizing New Zealand's acceptable level of protection. Cool. So post-border, basically, this is us, post-border. This is you as the grower. This is MPI's passive and active surveillance systems they have in place. This is reporting things that you think are weird through the 0800 number. This is the GIA in readiness and response activities that are being formed and informed by the likes of Tomatoes New Zealand, the likes of Vegetables New Zealand. New Zealand Grain and Seed Trades Association is as a GIA signatory under the Seed and Grain Readiness and Response Group. These are the production site practices that are so important to you guys, and it's also the pathway specific readiness activities to ensure that if something did come into New Zealand, we'd be able to respond appropriately. Next slide. Okay, so it's really a summary here. It's not a single point of defense. There are many layers in that system. No one area is perfect. No system is perfect. There is no such thing as 0% risk. Well, there is. It's not importing seed, which is not something that I am saying to do, by the way. Please don't let NZGSTA know that. The various layers reduce the risk. That's what they're doing. That's what's in place. Fundamentally supporting these layers, commercial practices. So I have accidentally forgotten to mention the Vegetable Seed Code of Practice, which is our code of practice. It's a voluntary code of practice that we have in place to ensure compliant seed is bought in and to ensure that traceability, and it's externally audited as well. And yeah, fundamental really is best practice, use accredited seed. I'll skip to the next one because I think this is, yeah. So James has talked about this. This is the non-commercial pathway. So we're seeing an increase of these beautiful blue strawberries and these rainbow tomatoes. Basically, AI is going crazy, and we're seeing people trying to get new niche varieties that look amazing on your Instagram, that look fantastic. And those are the people we're most concerned about. In addition to the mail, fast freight, illegal imports, and smuggling. There was a 2020 scam from China where seed was sent around the world in small packets. It was mislabeled, basically as bead or other sort of non-seed related things. It did not meet anybody's phytosanitary measures, and it came into a number of places. This was originally, we didn't know what was going on, but it was a brushing scam. So it was e-commerce people increasing their reviews, and that got through the system. And it was actually going out wider to educate public saying, this should not have got through the system. Please let us know. We'll come get it. So yeah, our biggest thing is this bypass of the biosecurity system and obviously smuggling, illegal imports. Next one. So non-commercial space, what's happening? So we've recently had a really interesting update from MPI just around their new X-ray ability that they've put in place in Auckland. They've put out the call that if people want to come into the mail pathway and see it, they can. I think, again, that might have just been to NZGSTA. Please check in with me if you do want to go and visit though. I'm sure we can arrange something. MPI have actually dedicated specific resource to e-commerce. They've gone to the likes of Wish, they've gone to Temu, eBay, they've gone to Amazon, and they've said how important biosecurity is to New Zealand and how we do not want non-commercial seed being accessible. And they've done a really good job. If you search the likes of Wish, Temu, eBay, it's really hard to actually find seed. I haven't looked into whether that's by an international, what is it? the IP address. Yeah, I need to look into whether or not that, yeah, it is geolocated to your IP address. That's something that I'll be following up. So that might be some ongoing work there. From GSTA perspective, yeah, the e-commerce, the fast freight and mail pathway is where we're most concerned and we'll be putting resource into. We're just going to be doing some projects looking at what the actual risk is and whether there's anything we can do to shore that up. We'd like to do that with the support of MPI, obviously. So that's still in a scoping phase at the moment. And there's also an upcoming ISF, which is the International Seed Federation e-commerce project. So they're wanting to upskill various national plant protection organisations and end users basically around e-commerce and the safest way to use that. So we'll be looking at working with them in that international space. So I think, yeah, so what you can do, I guess the main point that we really want to drive here, buy accredited commercially produced seed from a trusted source. Non-commercial seed is the biggest risk factor for importing unwanted organisms. Obviously, if you see something, report it through the MPI hotline, and obviously follow the production site biosecurity advice being provided by Vegetables New Zealand and Tomatoes New Zealand. Cool. Last one, I promise. So just flagging that tomato seed, capsicum seed, and brassica seed are actually on MPI's work program to reassess. What that looks like in the new restructure is something that hasn't really come down to us, so will be something that we're keeping abreast of. But yeah, that 3-page work program, import health standard, potentially going to be bigger than it was before. So yeah, that will be upcoming. Cool. And I'll hand over to the roundtable.
Cool. Thanks, Grace. So can I invite Janine from Lefroy Valley, Imke from Premier Seeds, Ingrid from Terra Nova Seeds, and Herman from Enza Zarden, please. Come and grab a seat, and James, you're welcome to stay up, or Chris as well if you want to. So questions or any